take a moment to introduce ourselves here in a minute. But you have joined our webinar, Connecting Our Kids Through the Head and the Heart, Social Emotional Well-Being of MSDWT Washington Township students. To start tonight, we are each going to just take a moment to set the tone and the lens for our evening by sharing about someone in our educational experience that has been impactful for us. So I can go ahead and start. And for me, it was a classroom teacher. It was my third grade teacher. And her and I developed a relationship not only because she was an amazing teacher inside of the school, but because she really connected with my family outside of school. She attended sporting events, birthday parties, and really became a lifelong friend to our family. And because of that experience has really inspired me to be the educator that I strive to be today. So that is a piece of my story, and I'm going to pass it along to each of my colleagues tonight and let them introduce themselves and share about someone that has impacted them.
Thanks, Emily. So I'm Crystal Hazlett, coordinator of student programs and community liaison for Washington Township Schools. Like Emily said, thank you so much for joining us tonight and for the people that will watch this as a recording. I will share that I really connected with my high school gymnastics coach at North Central High School. I would say she looked like me, and in a sport at the time with very little racial diversity, that was really meaningful for me. She also had really high expectations for me, which made me feel like I was capable of doing anything. But she met me in my challenges and also in my big accomplishments. So she really meant a lot to me in my high school journey. So I will pass it to who's next.
Good morning or good evening, everybody. My name is Jen Dodson, and I am the district lead counselor partnering with our secondary school counselors in our middle schools and high school. And when I think about my story and connection to school, it wasn't with a school counselor, it was with a teacher. And I felt this connection with this teacher because I was one of those students who kind of blended in and didn't require much probably of teachers. But she is a teacher who saw me, who took the time to get to know me. The simplest little things, like when I would pass her in the hall in a large high school, would name me by name. And I just felt seen in a way that I didn't always at school. And so for me, I think that is where a lot of my work in schools as a teacher and now as a counselor is grounded, is in helping our students to feel seen and heard. So I would say that's kind of my story with connection in schools.
Thanks, team. And hi, I'm Madeline Mason. I'm the middle school social emotional learning coach. And when we were reflecting on this question as a team and thinking back on my story, the word disconnection actually comes to mind. And I think it's actually what makes me really passionate about this work of social emotional learning. I was a student that definitely needed social emotional support and didn't receive it for the most part, I think because I was the student that sat up straight and was quiet and turned in all of my assignments and crossed my hands and, did everything that I was supposed to do. And so that just always makes me think of, what are the needs of some of our students who may not be reaching out, and how important it is to really have those deep relationships with students so that that transcends into their academic performance. And as you could see, we all kind of have a different story, a different person that we connected with or didn't connect with and needed that connection. And really, that's the theme of our presentation tonight, is that it's not all on teachers, it's not all on counselors, it's not all on coaches or social workers. It really is a team effort as we think about holistically supporting the social emotional well-being of all of our students.
So really keeping in that theme that it really takes all of us. What you're looking at right now is an illustration of the supports that are available to students and families within Washington Township schools. We're really proud of the way that we've really grown supports to students over the years. And so this, what's represented here is a description of school social workers, school counselors, school nurses, school psychologists, social emotional learning coaches, and multilingual family liaisons. And what's captured in each section is a description of each one of those roles. You should see these flyers displayed in schools and in buildings around the district.
So when we think about the work that we do as people who are connecting our students, as social emotional learning coaches, as counselors, as social workers, the work that we do is really rooted in our district strategic plan. And so in this slide, you can see some kind of snippets that we have pulled from our district strategic plan. And one of our main priorities, obviously, is equitable achievement. So as a part of that, we are speaking to increasing student academic success, as well as student social and emotional learning skills, because we know that these things are linked. So if we have students who are demonstrating that they have the social emotional skills and competencies that you're going to learn more about tonight, we know that they're in a good place to be able to focus on learning and more of that academic content. So it really goes hand in hand. And that's why both of those things are included and linked in the district strategic plan. Below this top priority, you can see some bullet points where there's additional details about what this looks like in our schools. You're going to see this woven through district strategic plans, school improvement plans, all of the driving documents or work that kind of drives what we do in schools. There's going to be a focus on how we respond to students. If they're having behavioral issues, there's going to be a focus on restorative practices in our schools and culturally responsive teaching. And all of that links to this social emotional learning and academic success. Furthermore, in alignment with the district strategic plan, we have developed as a district Elevate, which is a framework for instruction that you will see drive the work that our teachers are doing, but not just teachers, all of us who are working in schools. And there's 4 main components of the Elevate framework that really are the foundation of what we do. The first you can see up at the top is the teacher and student learning partnership, that it's a partnership and not a teacher who is standing up there and taking charge and leading everything, that really is a partnership and the teacher's coming alongside students. It's the development of a learning community, and that because we know that that's where students learn best. It's responsive instruction, and it's also professional learning. And so what you can see listed below, and I won't read through all of them today, but all of this information about the Elevate framework is available on the Washington Township website. But these are different skills that we list as a part of our Elevate framework that we are aiming to achieve as we work with students. And really, it encapsulates the social emotional learning skills and competencies that we'll talk more about today. It speaks to students being kind of in charge of their learning and inquirers who are thinking critically about the world that they live in and able to kind of take their learning and apply it in the world. So that's kind of the driving force behind all of our work, and it's a common bond that ties all of us together.
Thanks, Jen, for giving that framing. So we wanted to provide sort of a high-level overview, our why, how this ties into all the work that we do. It's not its own little branch or department over here. It really is intentionally embedded into the work that we do instructionally, academically, and social and emotionally in Washington Township. So with that said, that big picture overview, we're going to really zoom into each of our specific roles, keeping in mind that they all do function to work together and support students in this equitable achievement. So we're going to start with social emotional learning, and Emily and I will share a little bit about what we do specifically. So we'll start with defining social emotional learning in Washington Township. So we use the CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning definition of transformative SEL, which really centers equity and cultural responsiveness. So I'll read this for us. Transformative SEL is a process where young people and adults build strong, respectful, and lasting relationships that facilitate co-learning, to critically examine root causes of inequity, and to develop collaborative solutions that lead to personal, community, and societal well-being. So you see elements of our own stories, our own whys, as well as our district strategic plan and goals woven into this definition. And we also wanted to share that this comes from the Department of Education, that, when we talk about SEL, there has been a misconception in the past. We are doing a really good job in our district of kind of dismantling this, but, those soft skills, which can present the message that they're not as important or they're less important than, I guess, the hard skills. And we're really trying to break that down and say these are life skills that our students need and that will benefit them holistically. And again, not see them in separate lanes. So we just took this piece from the Department of Education website from a Forbes report that shows top 4 skills that employers want in graduates. So the ability to work in a team. So we see that SEL skill come through there, the ability to solve problems, making decisions, and communicate verbally with people inside and outside of an organization. So again, we're moving past seeing these as kind of like separate soft skills that are really just focused on emotions. That's one component of social emotional learning, but we wanted to share that as well.
So like Madeline said, in Washington Township, we follow the CASEL, what they call competencies. And CASEL, like she said, stands for the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. And just like we have academic standards for math, social studies, reading, science, all of those academic skills, the SEL competencies can kind of be seen as standards as well. So this is a visual that we've created specifically for our district, but it's based upon those CASEL competencies, and they focus on each of these core areas. So self-awareness, being able to accurately recognize your emotions, thoughts, and values and how they influence your behavior, growth mindset, and knowing your strengths. Self-management, being able to regulate emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, manage stress, control impulses, and motivate yourself by setting goals. Social awareness, taking different perspectives, emphasizing and showing concern for others, understanding cultural differences and diversity. Responsible decision-making, identifying solutions, and making reasonable decisions using critical thinking skills and decision-making, evaluating the consequences of decisions. And then relationship skills, building positive and healthy relationships that help you be successful and achieve your goals, skills for resolving conflict, collaborating, and working along lines of difference. So these are really what we view as our core pillars of social emotional learning in Washington Township. So what does that look like in our classrooms? These are some kind of big bullet points of what you will see in all areas of our classrooms in Washington Township and how we support students SEL. So through academic content, we believe and know that SEL is not a standalone silo in a bubble that just lives in one time of the day, that this is embedded into all of that we do in all academic areas. But we do have an intentional time in the day during our advisory time in our secondary classrooms and during our morning meeting time in our elementary classrooms, where classrooms come together as a community and be able to talk about things together, to model and intentionally teach specific social emotional learning skills and provide opportunities to practice. And oftentimes this is an opportunity just for kids to share and being able to connect with each other and their teacher, and engage in fun team building games and community collaboration during that time. Again, just like we talked about, that this is not something that is just in one specific time of day, even though we do have that standalone time that is dedicated to a lot of pieces of this, we know that this is all part of culturally responsive teaching, and that is in everything that we do. We work a lot with teachers. We know that when teachers are well and staff are well, they can be the best version of themselves for their students. So a lot of that is working on the social emotional learning skills of the adults within our buildings. All of those competencies that we just talked about, those are all growth areas for all adults in any workplace, and especially in our schools. So we do a lot of staff professional development and coaching cycles with staff. And then lastly, and we're going to dig into this a little bit more later on, last spring, we launched our Panorama SEL survey, where we were able to just uplift the perspectives of students and their voices through a variety of different survey questions, and really just giving us another piece of how students feel about their learning environment within their schools. And we do that within the Panorama SEL survey. Last, we have our second step curriculum, which was adopted over 3 years ago, and it is used in all of our K through 8 classrooms. And this is done within that advisory morning meeting time. These are specific lessons that are built on each of those 5 competencies, and really focus on some role playing, different scenarios that kids can talk about what they would do in a certain situation, and opportunities to be able to discuss that as a class.
So we wanted to actually share some of the curriculum with you. So this is a high-level overview of the second step curriculum at the middle school level. And so Unit 1 is focused on mindsets and goals, which is timely because that happens in the beginning of the year. These units coordinate with the quarters. So then Unit 2, recognizing bullying and harassment, which also is very timely. It falls right around October, which is Bullying Awareness Month. So that's a great opportunity for us to partner with counselors and social workers, which we oftentimes do. Unit 3, thoughts, emotions, and decisions. So right around this time, January, February, third quarter, where, we're starting to really feel a lot of things about this lengthy time and this quarter that kind of drags on. So really processing all of those emotions that come up, and how some of those emotions may be prohibiting students from living into their full potential in the classroom and being able to process through that in a safe space. And then Unit 4, which is the unit that students are currently engaging in, managing relationships and social conflict. So if you are familiar with middle schoolers, you have a middle schooler at home, you could probably relate to the importance of a lot of these topics being discussed and learned with them.
So very similar to the middle schools, our second step for our elementary K through 5 classrooms. And I will also say that we have this in our early learning center at Hilltop. So even some of our preschool students are exposed to this curriculum. So they are broken down into these 4 units, and they are the same for each grade level, but then each grade level dives deeper into age appropriate concepts that are focused within the unit. So Unit 1 is really those skills for learning. What does it look like to be a learner in the classroom? And there's a lot of consistent language that kids learn that are great and built upon by grade. Unit 2 is all about empathy and how we feel, how others feel in different situations. Unit 3 is emotion management and lots of calming strategies and many of your elementary students will probably talk about belly breathing and the calm down steps and how to name your emotion and then count and be able to use some breathing strategies to calm down. Unit 4 is all about problem solving. And like Madeline said, a lot of conflict resolution and opportunities for kids to really reflect on specific situations and how they might solve a conflict or a problem in that instance. So digging deeper into our Panorama surveys, we're just going to, again, highlight some bulleted pieces, but then we're also going to drop a link in the chat with some frequently asked questions regarding our surveys. So if you would like to learn more, we please encourage you to dive into that resource further. But what are our Panorama surveys? Panorama's mission is to support educators in improving outcomes using data, and a variety of schools across the United States utilize their platform. And it's been widely positive in the results that they see. The surveys are age appropriate and they're broken down for grades 3 through 5 and grades 6 through 12. And if a student feels that they maybe don't understand a question that is asked or they aren't comfortable responding to a question, they can always choose to not answer any question. I know this is an acronym as I'm saying it. I just realized that we should probably explain what that is. We have building MTSS coaches, which stands for multi-tiered systems of support. And basically those are coaches within our buildings or administrators that really look at data. And we view data as not just numbers on a test or a percentile rank. We really view these surveys as a piece of qualitative data and hearing what our students have to say and how they might feel in our school settings. So these coaches, they do just that. They look at academic data, but then they also look at qualitative data like this. And so they have access to our surveys and are able to disaggregate the data and share it with their staff. Our school social workers do as well, our school counselors, and our administrators. They review this data with school staff at a building level. So they don't look at student by student, but we really look at more of a holistic view of what the data is telling us and how that can impact instruction, school culture and climate, and many of those big picture things to help us improve our instruction and relationships with students and overall climate in our schools. So I will drop that link in the chat here in a moment if you'd like to learn more.
Thanks, Emily. So this is something that Emily and I created. This is a Panorama survey data snapshot. This is actually from the fall because we just concluded our spring survey, so we haven't had a chance to dive into that data yet. But again, we just wanted to give you a high-level overview of how we use Panorama and what its intention is in our district. So I'll start up at the top in the red. So as Emily already said, I'll just reiterate, our leadership teams at the different schools discuss the data, figure out, what are next steps that we could take to create a more supportive environment for students and respond to some of the needs that we see holistically. We use it for professional development for staff, and then we use it holistically for coaching support for staff. Some of the topics that we covered in this year's survey: supportive relationships, social awareness, learning strategies, self-efficacy, positive feelings, sense of belonging, school climate was assessed at the elementary, and then cultural awareness and action at the secondary. Some trends that came out. So the glows up at the top in the gray there, which is like the positives, which is also modeling a culturally responsive strategy of really starting with those assets and building on strengths. So strengths that we notice from the Panorama data is supportive relationships, and students, for the most part, feeling like they had really supportive relationships with their teachers, which is something we work really intentionally on in a lot of our professional development. So that was great to see. And then at the secondary level, really our students feeling aware, having that social awareness, and feeling inspired to take action to create a more just world and to create a more inclusive school. Some of our growth areas that we've been working on this year is creating a sense of belonging for all students, working on helping students to identify positive feelings, because educational neuroscience would tell us that being able to name feelings and cultivate positive feelings from experiences that we're having in and out of school really has an impact on healthy brain development. And then self-efficacy, so students really being able to tap into being an independent learner and utilizing learning strategies. And those are things that we have been working on and will continue to work on, because it is a lifelong journey in this work. So some of our next steps from this particular set of data, or this snapshot of data, was looking at student supports and learning environment factors and targeting some of these growth areas. So the sense of belonging, I can just give one quick example of how we did that. In 6th grade at one of the schools, I partnered with a counselor and we're creating an I am wall, where he went in and did some lessons with all of the students to really reframe, the negative of I am not to what I am. And it was beautiful what students came up with. And so then I'm working with a group of students to create a huge wall just full of all of these positive messages that students feel about themselves, and really cultivate that sense of belonging and the positive feeling. So that's one just big picture, specific way that we respond to some of this data. There's many other examples too. Just wanted to give you that one. And then really looking at our data by subgroups and looking at it through the lens of our culturally responsive teaching, and where we still need to focus to making sure that all of our students are feeling welcome, are feeling included, are seeing themselves reflected in the curriculum, and leaning into that equity piece. Sorry, my dog is playing with a toy right now. So if that was in the background, I apologize.
So in addition to utilization of Panorama to help us better understand our students and the learning environment and a lot of their skills that they have and that their self-report that they're doing on Panorama, we also utilize the Panorama platform to gather information from our families and parents and caregivers. So coming up in the next couple of weeks, you will see communication come out through the district where we will be asking our students' families, so parents and caregivers, to provide feedback to us about their perceptions of the learning environment in our schools, the rigorous learning environment, and any thoughts that they have. There will be questions, and it should not be something that will take a ton of your time, but we really hope that you will participate in that survey to help us get a better understanding of your perspective as parents and caregivers to help drive the work that we're doing in schools as well. So just a heads up, that window will be April 25th through May 13th. So that's coming up in a week or two. So as we transition into some of the more kind of role-specific supports that are in place in our buildings, I will be speaking to the school counseling perspective, and I'll just dig right in. So we feel really excited with the growth that has occurred in school counseling in Washington Township in the last couple of years. At the beginning of this year, we actually were able to add 5 additional counseling positions to better support our students. And a lot of our student to school counselor ratios are getting close to the recommended level by the national organization, so American School Counselor Association. So there's really promising investment on the district's part in the world of school counseling. And I know a lot of that has happened as a result of referendum dollars as well. So we currently have 25 school counselors in the district. They are all at the secondary level. So 3 at each middle school, 3 on each grade level support team at North Central High School. And what you will find at the middle school and the high school level is we are starting this year at the middle school level, and starting sooner than that in the last couple of years at the high school, we are doing a looping model. And the thing that we really like about that looping model is it allows us to stick with the same students for the duration of their middle school time or their high school time. So your student should only have 1 counselor during middle school and 1 counselor during high school. That allows us to really get that depth of relationship with our students and families and provide consistency. In addition to those school counselors, that we added a school counselor at True North Academy this year. We always have had a department chair at North Central. We have a coordinator of college and career counseling at the high school, and then the district lead, which is me. And this position just started this year at the start of 2021, but we're doing some really exciting work. And I will share more about that in a few minutes.
And so in 2016, our community really responded by approving a referendum that allowed our district to do lots of things. But one of those was to be able to hire school-based school social workers for each one of our schools. And so we have 14 school social workers, 1 at each elementary, 1 at each middle school, 2 at the high school, and 1 at a diagnostic program at one of our middle schools. The social workers on the secondary level are really part of kind of a student services or student support team at their school. So really joining in with the school counselors and the other roles that provide supports at the school building level. And then starting with the 2021 school year, the district was able to add a leadership position, which is what I hold now. And so I get really the honor and opportunity to walk alongside and lead our school social workers in the district.
When we look at what school counseling is and what it looks like in Washington Township, along the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see our 3 domains. And those are the 3 domains that we really focus our efforts as school counselors. So the first one is that social emotional development. So a lot of our kids are obtaining the skills they need to help manage their emotions and apply interpersonal skills during the SEL lessons that are happening at a tier 1 level for all students. But school counselors kind of come alongside to support that work as well. There are some students who might need additional support in order to develop those skills. And so that's where those school counselors are going to be there to assist. Another domain that your school counselors are working in is going to be academic development. So school counselors are implementing strategies and activities to support and to maximize students' ability to learn. That can be a direct service where a counselor is working directly with a student. That can also be an indirect service, which is a little bit more behind the scenes. Maybe it's some consultation with teachers or families or collaboration with other school staff members to help students get what they need. And then finally, the third domain is college and career readiness. So we are helping students to understand that connection between that K through 12 school and school now and down the line, what that looks like for me as an adult, whether that is pursuing higher education, pursuing the military, or going into the workforce, but preparing students to be thinking about what those things are, not just academically prepared, but also prepared as a whole child for everything that comes after graduation from high school. In order for us to do the work in these 3 domains, across the top of the screen, you'll see kind of what a lot of those services look like. So we have the short-term group counseling. This can be, this is more of like a social emotional focus. If it's a counseling thing, it is not therapy, but it's going to be more of a short-term intervention for students. So we might do a group on anxiety coping skills. Maybe there's a grief group, or maybe we have a large group of students who, maybe not large, but a significant enough group to create a group, maybe students dealing with separation or divorce of their parents. Those are just a few examples of what short-term counseling groups might be for. We also have short-term individual counseling. So I want to be clear that school counselors are not therapists. We're not trained therapists. We are school counselors. So typically what I would say is if it's something that's come up that is something we could deal with in 4 or 5 sessions, then that would be a school counseling topic, and that'd be something that the school counselor would handle. But if it's something that's going to be a little bit more involved, it's going to be a little bit more intensive, that's when we would refer out. And that wouldn't fall under this umbrella of school counseling. Academic advising can go anything from goal setting with a student who maybe is not having great grades or is dealing with a certain situation in a class. It could be as simple as setting goals and following up on those goals, to 4-year plans, creating 4-year plans and implementing those and looking at what high school will look like in its entirety in order to prepare for those post-secondary goals. It could be preparing students for college. So academic advising can look a lot of ways. Instruction could be classroom lessons, like what Madeline Mason, Miss Mason said just a couple of minutes ago, that a counselor did some lessons with students. So that could be classroom lessons. It could be small group lessons. One of the things that I had lots of small groups about as a middle school counselor was organization skills. How do you kind of get yourself together and adapt to being a student who has all these different teachers and all these different classes versus when you're coming from the elementary level? There's going to be consultation with other school staff and parents and caregivers in order to help the student progress in these areas. There's going to be collaboration with those people as well. And then a lot of times we're doing those outside referrals when we feel like there is a need for those things. But along the way, tons of collaboration, again, like we said before, with all of these different entities within our schools that all have that common focus of student well-being at the heart of everything that we're doing. I would share that the work that we're doing as school counselors, it is rooted in data and it is proactive in nature. And that's an area where we're continuing to grow and to learn. We are working slowly but surely towards implementing what we call comprehensive school counseling programs that really are very involved and very specific to our individual schools and the needs our data suggests our students have, and the data and what our students are showing us their needs are. And so we're really excited about this work. And I'm just really excited to see the commitment on the part of not just our school counselors, but other staff members, administration, who see the need for this work and are kind of digging in head first. One last thing I would add before I move on to the next slide is when we go to that instruction and we go to that college and career readiness, one other thing that we have added this year that I just want to touch upon is Naviance. So if you have a student who is in middle school or high school, this is an amazing tool. And middle school this year started implementing the curriculum through Naviance. So this is a college and career readiness platform. Ask your student about it. Ask them to share with you what they have learned about themselves through taking some of those surveys. This gives students the opportunity to explore themselves and their interests and their strengths and begin to plan ahead for the future. Our high school students have access to those same surveys. They're not doing curriculum in the same way, but they have lots of access. And most of our high school students have been engaging in work in Naviance as well. So this is an amazing tool to dig into as you're having conversations as a parent with your student about their future plans. Because we know those conversations really need to start pretty early. It really is too late if we're waiting until junior or senior year to start thinking about what do you want to do after graduation. So we're starting those conversations early, knowing that ideas and thoughts are going to change during the course of middle school and high school. But it's really interconnected with all of the work that we're doing with our Elevate framework, with our social emotional learning competencies. It all just kind of seems to fit together. So as I kind of was mentioning, as we are looking to implement comprehensive school counseling, we are looking to align our models for school counseling with the American School Counseling Association model. And so kind of touched on these things, but I'll kind of mention them again. That means proactive supports for students instead of maybe more of an old school model of guidance counselor who maybe focused more on scheduling and college applications and transcripts, and maybe reacted a little bit more and just received issues and helped support students who are having concerns. This new model is a little bit more proactive in nature. Instead of just waiting for things to happen, we are trying to be on the front end of it to intervene on an early end through those lessons, through those groups, to help students to have those most positive outcomes. We're also focusing on student advocacy, so advocating for our students and equitable access to learning environments and equitable learning opportunities as well. I just want to reiterate one thing, and this is this little part at the bottom. You might have heard me mention guidance counselor, that was kind of an antiquated model. And this is something that if you talk to any school counselor, I bet they will have really strong opinions on. But I'll just share this quote. So we're no longer guidance counselors only focused on graduation and course selection for students. We are professional school counselors who focus on the academic success, college and career readiness, and social emotional development of all students. And I feel like that quote just kind of encapsulates kind of what's driving school counseling in Washington Township and the profession in general. But we're really excited about the work and really excited about the investment that our community and our school district has made in school counseling so that we can make this work happen. And it's all for our students.
Thanks, Jen. So this is a snapshot of the role of the school social worker in Washington Township and really how their work includes social emotional learning. As has been said already, it's really the work of all of us. And so at the top, you'll see different ways we engage with students, with families, schools, and the community. But I'm really going to spend some time more on the individual student support and small group counseling, because I really want to give you some examples of some of the work that our school social workers are doing right now to support students. So like at the elementary level, you might see one of our school social workers working with students around what fairness looks like in school and outside of school, as well as how to advocate for themselves and their peers in a way that is productive. Additionally, we have school social workers working at the elementary level one-on-one with students who are learning to manage anxiety, particularly around test time. Another school social worker working to address feelings of grief and loss and working to develop healthy relationships and self-confidence with students. At the high school level, many of our two school social workers are working individually with students around brief problem-solving techniques and stress management strategies. And one of our elementary school social workers shared a really creative idea with me that she is doing and created a escape room to work with students and teach strategies around anti-bullying and kindness strategies as well. So in addition to that, just with the small group counseling that some of our elementary workers are working on, some of them are meeting with small groups to work with students around friendship skills, where they're practicing listening to others, asking follow-up questions, making apologies, and forgiving others. They're also working on emotional regulation, where students are learning about body language and tone of voice. We have some small groups also working with students around divorce and separated parents, and also peer interactions. We have some middle school social worker who's done some presentations in classrooms around responsible technology use. And at the high school, our school social workers have done presentations along with teachers to discuss coping with high levels of stress. So just again, some examples, I wanted you to just kind of hear about how school social workers are really also, involved in SEL, and you hear some of those competencies and some of the examples that I shared. So at the top of this screen, like I said, you do see some other ways that school social workers are engaging in work with schools and with students and families. But I do feel like some of those are pretty self-explanatory. So like I said, I really wanted to focus in on some of those individual and small group counseling that's going on. So I did want to point out that Indiana school social workers are dually licensed. And so that means that they are eligible for professional license through the Indiana Department of Education. Professional license through with their LCSW, but the Indiana Department of Education license is actually the student services license that they're eligible for. In addition to that, really wanted to share that school social workers were really guided in our work by the National Association of Social Workers and the Indiana School Social Work Association. And really at the core of our work and what's really important to us as school social workers are those values that you see at the bottom that really guide the work that we do.
At the secondary level, where we do have school counselors and social workers, you will see a high level of collaboration. And I just wanted to give a little tidbit and share and brag on one of our school counselors and social work team at Northview Middle School. So on this, this is actually a picture of a magazine article. It's the American School Counselor Association monthly magazine. And this was just highlighting some of how we celebrated National School Counseling Week, where we are really advocating for the profession of school counseling. But the theme this year was Better Together. And each day of the week, we were charged with kind of celebrating how we partner with others who are also having a common goal of these student outcomes pertaining to SEL. And up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see this is a picture of Molly Henry, one of the counselors at Northview, and Taylor Rachel, who is the school social worker at Northview, where they had shared on social media how they are better together and work collaboratively. And this was kind of a cool thing. It made it into this national magazine. You can see Michelle Obama has a quote here. You can see one of her posts. You can see some different political figures. It's just kind of a cool thing that theirs was kind of plucked out of the Twitter universe and celebrated. But it just makes us really, really proud of the work that we're doing in Washington Township together, all for our students. And like we kind of said, there are going to be some unique situations that students or families encounter. And in those cases, those are going to be the times where we partner together all the time. It could be for basic needs. It could be mental health supports. It could look a lot of different ways for a lot of different situations. But just really wanted to brag on some of the work that our people are doing, because it's pretty awesome.
And like has been said many, many times already, we cannot do this work alone. It takes all of us. We are so much better together. And so we did want to obviously mention the other supports that are in place for students and families in our district. Obviously, our partnership with our school-based mental health provider, Cummins Behavioral Health. We also have behavior interventionists in our elementary schools and multilingual family liaisons that walk right alongside us and assist us in serving our multilingual learners and families. In addition to that, our school nurses, school psychologists, and community partners, which I'll just say have really carried us even before the pandemic, but certainly during that time. And now as we are kind of, coming back together, if you will, our community partners have been right alongside us and our families in the community, providing basic need support and so much more. And so what you see right there in the picture is a picture of elementary school students who are saying thank you to one of our faith-based organizations that provided school supplies for all of the children in an elementary school, which is an ongoing partnership that our faith-based partners, have really committed to doing yearly. So we really appreciate that.
All right, so we are approaching the end of our webinar, but we do have a few minutes. If you have any questions, we can answer a few of them now. If you use the Q&A box, that would be best. And at the very end, in a few minutes here, we'll share our contact information. So if you have a very specific question for one of us, you can reach out that way as well. So we'll give it a minute or so to see if any questions populate. Well, team, perhaps we were very thorough in our information sharing this evening. Does anyone have anything that we missed, or are we ready to close out? Anything that you'd like to share before we share our contact information? Right. Well, then I think Emily is going to close us out.
It looks like there is a question that popped into the Q&A. Maybe not. No specific question at the moment, but so much appreciation for all you do. My third and kindergarten students rave about all they learned through Second Step. That's a very nice. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And I will just say, I think Emily mentioned we started piloting the Second Step curriculum like 3 to 4 years ago. And it just becomes more and more evident that the students are internalizing the content and that there's a lot of engagement and investment in the program. I've had several middle school teachers ask me, like, are we going to continue with this? Can we continue with this? That's really awesome to hear as well. Thanks for sharing that.
I would echo that too. As a parent with kids in the district, I see my students use it, or my kids, not my students. I see my kids utilizing a lot of those skills that they've learned at a very foundational level in elementary school as well.
It's really cool to see teachers and counselor conversations and social skill groups like building on those skills too, which really represents this idea of, you know, all of us using the language for students and working together on those skills.
I know we have one more question in the chat, but he doesn't have audio, so we can respond in the chat to that question.
Yep, I'd be happy to do that. I'll do that right now.
Perfect. So before we sign off, we'll respond to your question regarding translators. But I think that comment is really a great way to close us out, and just all that we've spoke to today and how we started with our story of people that have impacted our educational experience, and how that might be a teacher, but it might not. And that there are so many support staff within our schools, and that our students are much more than one specific test score or one specific score on anything, that we really are teaching and forming humans that are going into our communities and our society as future leaders. So thank you again for being here tonight. We appreciate you.